Good morning, December 30th. All right, time for our weekly update, our weekly market update. Let me share my screen, and sadly, there is not a ton of new data to share. It's kind of the doldrum of the end of the year. I did download all of the RMLS data, so we've got from December 29th, from the 1st of December to December 29th. But yeah, let me just kind of power through it. The mortgage credit availability index is the same. And we did get new Freddie Mac mortgage interest rates, and this is at a record all-time low. The mortgage interest rate is 2.66, and I think it's with 0.5 points, which is basically means that a point is 1% of your total loan amount. So if you were going to be loaning $100 or $100,000, the point would equal $1,000. So 2.66% at 0.5 points is $500 of points per $100,000 of loan. And this is the principal and interest, $403.49 for $100,000, which is just incredibly low. Yeah, so this data, national data, is hasn't updated. That will update in the middle of January. The inventory and sales price are, inventory is all-time low, and the sales price is also an all-time high. Okay, looking on to the PDX metro area, and inventory has gone below 1 month. I figured out how to calculate all of the statistics so that I can get a little bit more updated data. When it comes to new listings, new listings is pretty similar to December, pretty similar to November. But compared to December last year, there are 73% new listings. So I think that this really just shows how confident consumers are, or sellers are, to be listing their properties. Normally, there's a huge drop between November and December just because of the holidays, but there is a ton of seller confidence. It's really a seller's market. So yeah, and then in terms of new pending sales, there are twice as many new pending sales as there were last year. And new pending sales from last month is a pretty huge increase as well. So there's just a ton of activity happening. And one interesting thing is that about the same amount of properties closed in December, and I would expect that there's probably a couple more closing today and tomorrow before the new year. So, I would expect it to be something like a 5 or 10% increase over last year. But that's with closed sales. It just seems like December is a very popular month to close sales, and yeah. Anyway. Year to date, the average home price has gone up 7.5%. That's a pretty big number. Yeah, that's a lot, and it's really interesting times. So I would expect there to be similar increases next year too. Okay, going on to the national rent index and rental data. So I did quite a bit of research on these because we did have data. December is notoriously a bad month for rents, and I think we all know that due to the seasonality of it. So all negative, and national, City of Portland, Beaverton, and Gresham. So that's no surprise. But looking at kind of the annual numbers, this is where it gets kind of interesting. I was able to pull rent data from, back to about 2006, and the all-time low for rent drop in 1 year came right after the Great Recession in 2009. And Portland specifically had some pretty major rent drops during that period. But the city of Portland is being hit with an all-time low. This is the lowest that rents have ever dropped in the city of Portland. So annually, it's negative 6.3%. And I think that is statistically very important, because it either means that we're going to see a bigger rebound as the city of Portland comes back, or if there's a continued exodus from the downtown areas, then this could be the sign of a long-term decline. So this is just interesting because this is a new all-time low. Annually for Beaverton, it's down a little bit. That's very reasonable for coronavirus. And then Gresham is up 1.3%. So yeah, those rent numbers are very interesting. And then as far as net migration, jobs, we don't have any new data. All of that stuff will be coming out at the end, or at the beginning of next month. And there'll certainly be a ton of data kind of towards the end of January when all of the 2020 reports come out, and we'll really see what happened looking back at those numbers for 2020. So that's all I've got for today. Any questions, you guys?
For the Portland decline in rent, does that cause any concern for you, seeing that number decreases drastically as it did?
I mean, being a long-term purchaser of real estate, I think it presents opportunity for buy and hold investors who are well capitalized enough to hold properties for a long period of time. It's not good for flippers. It's not good for, syndicators who are, needing those big gains. If they're needing to complete a big value add project and sell, it's bad for developers as well. So individuals who focus on generating an income through real estate, that aren't providing a service, are going to get hit by that, and they'll need to be shifting their focuses to, probably to single family homes and condos that are, kind of a townhouse style condo. That's kind of my take on that.
And follow-up question for you, since it doesn't seem like downtown Portland is going to be back to normal anytime soon, do you think that number is going to get larger in the negative direction for rent decreases?
6% is a pretty big drop, and during 2009 or 2008, 2009, 2010, there was kind of a negative trend for a few years in a row. I think predictions, CBRE is saying that rents will be flat. I I don't expect huge rent increases, kind of in the closer in core anytime soon. So, I would say like it's gonna be similar to what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010 in terms of rents. So 8, 9, and 10 were all negative years, and then it was about even in 11, and then we started ramping up to see those huge rent increases in 14, 15, 16, and like that's really when developers kind of like descended on the city. We had cranes everywhere, and I kind of see that cycle repeating again. So, I would not expect rents to go back up for a couple of years.
Okay, another follow-up question. Since history shows that there are pretty large rent increases after a cycle like this, but now that there's a rent control that limits the amount that rent can be increased, do you think it's going to be a little bit less aggressive than it was a few years ago?
Certainly, but considering that rents can be increased by 9 to 10%. I do expect the state of Oregon to kind of ratchet down on that. But I don't see, I don't expect city of Portland to get turned into a kind of like San Francisco style rent control where you're not able to increase rent even if a tenant moves out. That doesn't seem like the environment that we're in. And the rent control rules that are in place are to create a way to preserve housing for longtime Portlanders. So I would expect to see once the market comes back, I would expect to see large rent increases like 10, 9, 10% kind of across the board. And it's just because when a property goes vacant, you can re-rent it at the market rate, and I don't see that going away. Yeah, it might take a little bit longer. It might be a little bit of a slower, longer rent growth trend, but downtown Portland will become popular again, and once kind of the commercial real estate shakeup happens over the next couple of years, we're going to see downtown revitalized.
Cool.
Do you think another factor of this major rent drop is due to the amount of inventory that is currently downtown for condos and condo-like apartments? Because there's been a decent amount of new construction for like mid-rises and things like that.
I mean, for 2020, deliveries were down quite a bit from previous years. We're kind of getting towards the end of that inclusionary zoning backstock. So there's I've seen a ton of 19-unit apartments being built just so that they can all be market rate. But I would say that, yes, there is a lot of inventory for Class A 1-bedrooms and studios downtown, and that is a lot of the rent decrease, and also that was a lot of the big rent jumps is those units when they were getting delivered brand new in 2016, 2017, 2018, they were being marketed at the most one bedrooms have ever been listed for. So
Okay.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening on the market update.
Thank you for
Until next
presenting it.
week.